What's up, guys, and welcome back to another episode of the Figures of Sport podcast. Now, in our last episode, we talked about the Kevin Durant trade, the NBA Finals, the Tyrese Halliburton injury, and we have a lot to cover today. But right after we posted that episode, obviously a huge thing in the NBA happened, and that is, of course, the NBA draft. Now, we're going to jump right into that. So, the first thing that I want to talk about is obviously there was not much debate for that number one overall pick, but the Mavericks captured the Flagg, drafting Cooper Flagg number one overall. He's going to be going to a team when fully healthy. We'll have a Kyrie Irving, Klay Thompson, Anthony Davis, Daniel Gafford, Derek Lively. Of course, you got guys off the bench like Max Christie. Um, you know, uh, that's that is a squad. I think fully healthy, that Dallas Mavericks team is going to be one of the best teams in the Western Conference and in the NBA. We just have to see how everything is going to mesh. But outside of that, Dylan Harper went number two to the San Antonio Spurs. Now there was a lot of questions about his potential fit there because obviously they have a a roster that is full of guards, right? You have Stephon Castle, De'Aaron Fox, now Dylan Harper, and there's going to be guys that are going to be um, trying to get some minutes. Is Dylan Harper going to come in and start? Probably not. Um, but I think that was probably the best player available, especially for that Spurs team. I think that they're going to be a great team in this Western Conference next year. Again, De'Aaron Fox, um, Wemby when healthy. Um, it's going to be a great team to watch, and I'm excited. I'm very excited to watch that San Antonio Spurs team. And at number three, we've got the Philadelphia 76ers going out and selecting VJ Edgecombe. And, you know, it raised some eyebrows, not because of his talent, but just because of how he fits into their current roster construction. There was some people that say, you know, with Tyrese Maxey, Jared McClain, and potentially Quentin Grimes in that backcourt, where does VJ Edgecombe fit? But the talent is not a question. The guy is an athletic freak. He's going to be able to help them out offensively for sure. But they're an undersized team at the guard position, and of course, we don't know what that Philly team is going to be. Because injuries, it sucks to say, but injuries are going to impact that team because of Paul George and Joel Embiid. Those are two guys that have been notorious for missing time due to injury. So it's going to be interesting to see how VJ Edgecombe fits into their plans next season and going forward. But overall, a great talent at number three. And then um, the Charlotte Hornets went out and grabbed Concanupple. Great player that was able to, really go out. I think he's going to be a good fit for that team in Charlotte. Uh, Now, I think he's not going to be a ball dominant guy, but I think he has a high IQ and he's going to be able to play well alongside um, a LaMelo Ball and a Brandon Miller. So we're going to be able to see how that works out. The Charlotte Hornets did some questionable things, trading Mark Williams, but we'll get into that in a second. But again, I'm not really sure what the Charlotte Hornets are going to do. I think at a certain point, you really need to think about trading a LaMelo Ball and just kind of revamping this roster. Um, I just don't know what they're doing at this point, But hopefully, uh, Knuppel can come in and be an impact player and be a good fit for that Charlotte Hornets team. Now, when we look at number five, obviously Ace Bailey, a guy who was definitely not expecting to go to the Utah Jazz at number five. He definitely expected to go to a Washington Wizards or a Brooklyn Nets team, kind of trying to force his way over there. But the Utah Jazz weren't passing up on him. Obviously, he's a great talent, and he's going to get time to play, and he's going to have a lot of opportunity over in Utah. So it's going to be exciting to see how he kind of fits into their plans. And now they actually, we're going to talk about it later once we jump into the NBA free agency portion of the podcast today. But Jordan Clarkson is no longer a member of the Utah Jazz, so he is definitely going to have the opportunity, as well as Colin Sexton. He is definitely going to have the opportunity to go out there, put up shots, and put up some numbers for that Utah Jazz team. But again, as I said, he didn't really expect to go there. He didn't show up right away like most rookies do after the draft, but he ended up returning to or showing up to the facility. There was some speculation that if he didn't show up, he would hold out. But again, everyone relax. He's there. He will be playing for the Utah Jazz, so will be exciting to see that. But um, again, that's the top five. Now, one of my favorite picks is Jeremiah Fears to the New Orleans Pelicans, and it's not just because of how he fits in this team, but it's because of that jersey he has, number 0, Fears. Zero Fears is going to go triple platinum this year. I think that's going to be a big jersey across the nation, in my opinion, this year. So that's going to be a great jersey to see on the court. I liked what the Pelicans did in this draft. They traded up to number 13. They were able to go get Derek Queen. They traded a 2026 first round pick to Atlanta. But again, you now, when fully healthy, you are going to have a team. Yes, they did trade CJ McCollum, but they have a team that is going to have, when healthy, and we won't see this team at full strength until probably 2027, is going to be DeJounte Murray, Jordan Poole, Zion Williamson, Derek Queen, and I think they can be a solid team, but this year I don't really have great expectations for the New Orleans Pelicans. But again, I did like what they did in the draft, going out and grabbing Derek Queen. He's a great talent, and then getting Jeremiah Fears and Jordan Poole. He's going to be a guy that he should be able to go out and put up numbers this year, alongside Zion if Zion decides to play basketball this year. So, which we have yet to really see him play a full healthy season of basketball. But again, Zion is a great talent, so we'll see what this team can do this year. But again, the Western Conference is stacked. But again, I did really like some of the moves that the Pelicans made in this draft. Now, talking about my hometown Chicago Bulls, I was kind of questioning the decision. They drafted Noah Asengay from France or Germany, I believe. He's a 6'10", 6'9", 6'10" forward. He's definitely more advanced defensively right now than he is offensively, but they have a guy like similar to that in who they drafted last year in Matas Buzelis. They have a bunch of those guys that can kind of, they're 6'7", 6'8", 6'9". I'm just not sure what the Chicago Bulls are doing. And speaking of the Chicago Bulls, they actually went out and traded Lonzo Ball for Isaac Okoro, who was the number 5 pick in the same draft that they drafted Patrick Williams. So I just don't know what direction the Chicago Bulls are going. Obviously, they still have guys like Kobe White. There's a lot of attention on them to try and re-sign Josh Giddey to a long-term deal. They're going to have Nikola Vucevic. But again, this just screams a team that's going to continue to fight for a play-in spot. And for me, I would love it if the organization decided to go one way or the other. Are you going to go all in and compete, or are you going to try to rebuild this team the right way? Because obviously, when you are a play-in team, the best talent is going to be available at the higher picks in the draft, the 1, the 2, the 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Now, when you're constantly picking in the late teens, the late lottery picks, there is no guarantee, right? And obviously we saw that Patrick Williams at number 4 a couple years ago was a miss, but they rewarded him with a pretty large contract. And I'm not, again, I just don't see the value in his deal for the production that he puts out on the court. So Chicago Bulls, there has been some good things said about Noah Essengue, but again, I really want the organization to choose one way or the other. Um, you can't give a lot of playing time to young guys, but then and hope for them to develop if you're trying to compete for a playoff spot. And it's I just think that this team has to eventually decide one way or the other. So, but again, we're gonna talk about um, how some of the other teams in the draft fared. The Phoenix Suns, as I had mentioned earlier, they traded for a Mark Williams from the Charlotte Hornets. Then they drafted Maluk over at number 10. Um, so they, and if I'm not mistaken, the deal went down for Mark Williams, and then minutes later they went out and drafted Maluk, the center from Duke. Um, so it raised some questions because now they have a pretty big front court. They have a lot of guards and a lot of centers now. So it's just going to be interesting to see what happens and who moves. Again, I think I mentioned in the last episode that there's been some speculation that the Suns will try to reroute Jalen Green in a potential deal somewhere else. Of course, they still have Bradley Beal on their books. I don't think Devin Booker is going anywhere. But that is something that we should keep our eyes on. I think Devin Booker should stay in Phoenix. I think that's just the best place for him. He's been there his entire career so far. But again, I just don't know what they are doing right now. Having that logjam at the guard position, at the center position, it's going to be interesting to see what Phoenix does going forward. But they do have a new head coach, so who knows what can happen with this Phoenix organization. Now, the Brooklyn Nets made 5 first-round picks in the first round, definitely signaling a full rebuild. And they also, were able to make some post-draft moves that we'll talk about later that are more related to free agency. But I believe that was the most first round pick selections by a single team in NBA history. So, again, the Brooklyn Nets, they're a team that definitely needs all the help that they can get. Now, again, I'm just not sure what they're trying to do. Drafted some point guards, some guys that can be really good pieces. But again, I just don't see this as a team that is going to compete in the near future at all. It's going to take some time for these guys to develop and for the Nets to really kind of put out a truly competitive team on the floor. But some of the smart picks or steals from this draft were definitely Thomas Sorber to OKC. He's a guy that can be a great fit alongside Chet Holmgren long term. He's a guy that I think can come in if OKC decides they want to go cheaper at the center position and let Isaiah Hartenstein walk after a couple of seasons, being that he was their big signing last offseason. He's a guy that I think can kind of come in and do what Isaiah Hartenstein does, and he's going to be a lot cheaper than Hartenstein is right now. So I like that pick for OKC. Sam Presti does it again. And, Jace Richardson, the son of Jason Richardson, he landed with Orlando at number 25. He could be a guy that comes in and is rotation ready off the jump. A story that I think is going to be a great one to follow is Cedric Coward. He started out as a D3 guy, ended up in D1, and then went number 11. And I think that he can be a great story just to follow if you're a fan of those kind of things. So we'll keep some eyes on that throughout the year. Now, other picks that I'd say were some shockers was the Toronto Raptors selecting Colin Murray Boyles at number 8. Now, he was a guy, or number 9, I apologize. He was a guy that he has a high motor, he's physical. He's from South Carolina, but he wasn't projected to go top 10, so that was a bit of a shocker. Then the Grizzlies, which then traded their pick to Portland, surprised everybody by taking Yang Hansen, a 7'2" Chinese center at number 16. He was projected to go second round or maybe late first round, but some of the news that you kind of hear around the league is that he has Jokic-like traits. So very, very enticing if you're Portland. And now Portland obviously let go of DeAndre Ayton. So with Hansen and Donovan Clingan, they still do have Robert Williams. It's another logjam situation over at the center position for the Trailblazers, but it is going to be interesting to see Yang Hansen and how he kind of develops over the next season and then going forward. But as we speak about the Portland Trailblazers, something that we didn't talk about, obviously, in last week's episode because it happened after we put that episode out, was that the Boston Celtics are currently in that rebuild mode. They traded Drew Holiday to the Portland Trailblazers, and rumors are that he is pissed. He did not want to go there. He wants to play for a contender. So they're the Trailblazers traded Anthony Simons for Drew Holiday, and Anthony Simons is a guy who is going to go and play for the Celtics, but he's a very different player than Drew Holiday, right? So the Celtics are going to be getting a very different player. He's a offensive first-minded player, not the same energy or effort that Drew Holiday brings on the defensive side of the ball, but Anthony Simons could be a guy that if the Celtics choose to not go into the season with him, they could get a slightly decent return, being that he's on an expiring contract. But if he does play for Boston, he could be a guy that can help, with a fully healthy Celtics team, a Derek White, Jaylen Brown, Jason Tatum. He's a guy that can definitely be a big offensive piece for them. But continuing on with that Celtics rebuilding their team kind of theme, they traded Kristaps Porzingis to the Atlanta Hawks. And we'll talk about the Hawks in just a little bit after we start discussing some of the free agency stuff. But, I think that clearly signals a shift in the mindset of the Celtics. They knew that the team that they had and the payroll that they had going forward was not going to be sustainable. So they needed to make some of these moves. And I'm interested to see in how competitive the Celtics are and if they make any other future moves this offseason. They've lost some key pieces. But it's going to be interesting to see just the thought process and some of the future moves that the Celtics will probably make this year and moving forward. So next up, some news that broke, because we're recording this on Tuesday, right? So this episode will be up tomorrow, Wednesday, but we're recording this on Tuesday. So some of the news that came out today, Shea signed a 4-year, $285 million extension with the Oklahoma City Thunder. He's going to be making, on average, $71 million per year. He went out and got his bag. Obviously, Shea had one of the best seasons that we've seen from an NBA player, making the All-Star team, the All-NBA team, Finals MVP, Western Conference Finals MVP, and obviously winning the NBA championship, and then now going out and getting a bag. Now, he could have waited until next year and got a 5-year, I believe it was $350-ish million deal, but he said, I'm going to sign now. He wants to be in OKC, so they rewarded him with a bag. So shout out to Shea. Go get your bag. You've been playing great. Keep it up. And this OKC team is here to stay. And we're going to have to see how they try to maneuver these other contracts for guys like Jalen Williams, Chet Holmgren going forward because of the new CBA. Some of these teams aren't going to be able to stay together for forever. So it's going to be interesting to see what OKC does going forward. But we're going to move on now, and we're going to talk about some of the big free agency stories. One of the first things that came out, Jaren Jackson Jr. went out and got a bag. Do I think he is worth $240 million over 5 years? I don't think so. You're 7 feet and you average 5 rebounds. Come on, man. Like, I think they locked in a defensive anchor in Jaren Jackson, but now with Desmond Bane gone, and it's just Jaren Jackson and Ja. Obviously, they went out and signed some other guys, and when healthy, this is a good team. I just don't know if Jaren Jackson Jr. is $240 million worth over 5 years. So that's just my thoughts. Come at me in the comments if you want. Um, but that's just my personal decision, my personal opinion. Um, Now, we mentioned the Brooklyn Nets earlier, and we're going to talk about them again. They actually went out and they traded Cam Johnson to the Denver Nuggets for Michael Porter Jr. Now, I think that is a fantastic trade for the Denver Nuggets. They're getting a guy in Cam Johnson who is better defensively, more reliable offensively, and he's a guy that has a higher basketball IQ, in my personal opinion, than Michael Porter Jr. Um, I think what they're getting in Cam Johnson is very similar to kind of what they had in Michael Porter, but an upgraded version, and it's cheaper. Michael Porter Jr. had a huge contract. They get off of that contract. They also brought in Bruce Brown, and they also added Tim Hardaway Jr., a guy who can come out, and we saw what he did in Detroit last season, producing at a high level. He's going to be a guy that can come in off the bench for the Nuggets and be an impact player in that rotation. They also went and added some depth at the center position, trading for Jonas Valanciunas. Now, Denver might be back. I think they still need another combo guard maybe that they can bring off the bench. But adding guys like Tim Hardaway, Jonas Valanciunas, Bruce Brown, and Cam Johnson to that main core of Jokic, Aaron Gordon, and Jamal Murray is going to be huge for that Denver Nuggets team. If you guys remember, they took OKC to 7 games with an injured Michael Porter Jr. and an injured Aaron Gordon. So this Denver Nuggets team might be back and be very dangerous next season. Very excited to watch them. Now, we're going to talk about the Houston Rockets. Obviously, we talked about the Kevin Durant trade last week in our episode, but they went out, they added Dorian Finney-Smith, they added Clint Capella. They're huge now. They have, obviously, Alperen Sengun. They have Steven Adams, who they signed to an extension. Now you go out and get Clint Capella. I think this is a team, and they also re-signed Jabari Smith to a huge extension. This is a team that is definitely trying to compete at a high level starting this year. I think with the additions that they've made, including Kevin Durant, DFS, and Clint Capella, this is a team that is going to be uh, fighting for a championship, this season. So I'm excited to see the Houston Rockets. Again, those 3 teams in Texas with the Mavericks, the Rockets, and the Spurs, it's going to be really, really fun to watch. The Western Conference this year in general is just going to be an absolute bloodbath. I'm excited. I love to see it. And we're going to see some competitive basketball this year. Now, James Harden re-signed with the Clippers, 2 years, $81.5 million. I think that was definitely necessary for the Clippers. They needed to go out and re-sign him, but then they went out and also signed Brook Lopez, poaching him from the Milwaukee Bucks. Now the Clippers are going to keep their core intact. They add Brook Lopez, rim protection, 3-point shooting. Excuse me. And it's just going to be, they're basically going to run it back with what they had last year, just adding a little bit of depth pieces here and there. Now, again, I talked about the Atlanta Hawks. They traded that number 13 pick to the Pelicans. They're going to get a first-round pick in return next year, which could be a great pick if the Pelicans don't pan out to be a good team. And I think that was a smart deal for the Hawks. Excuse me, again. I think it could be a great deal for the Hawks. But again, they went out and in free agency, they signed Nickeil Alexander-Walker, a great guard that they can bring off the bench. And then they also signed Luke Kennard, who is going to be, I think it's a 1-year deal, but he's a guy that is going to be able to bring shooting off that team because a lot of their perimeter shooting was reliant on Trae Young's success from deep. And now adding a guy like Luke Kennard, obviously they added Kristaps Porzingis. this is a team, in my opinion, that the Atlanta Hawks can definitely. I think they are going to break that play-in curse that they've had for the last couple of years. This is going to be a team that can really compete at a high level. I think if everyone is healthy, having Dyson Daniels, you know, uh, Kristaps, Trae Young, Nikhil Alexander Walker, um, and I think they're going to be a great team. And of course with a healthy Jalen Johnson, we know what he can bring to that Hawks team. So I'm excited to see what they do this season. Obviously, excuse me, guys. Um, LeBron James opted in to his player option. And this is the first time, I believe, in his career that he is playing on the last year of a deal, that he hasn't re-signed for whether it be a 2-year or 3-year deal. This is the first time in his career that I believe he's playing on the last year of a deal. This could be signaling the end of LeBron's career. I don't think he's going elsewhere to play, but you never know. But again, I think that it is going to be interesting to see what the Lakers do now. They've only made one signing so far. There's rumors that because the Portland Trailblazers bought out DeAndre Ayton's contract, he's a guy that the Lakers are going all in for to add some size to that roster. He's a perfect fit, in my opinion, for the Lakers, being that he's a lob threat and he still can play pretty good defense at the rim. Um, I just think that their biggest signing so far is Jake um, Laravia, who they got via a sign-in trade. But again, no splashy signings. And then on top of that, they lost Dorian Finney-Smith to Houston, and a guy like Brook Lopez, who would have been a good fit for them as well, is now going to the Clippers. So it's going to be interesting to see what the Lakers do and how they kind of rebuild this team now with Luka and LeBron. And obviously, we know that going forward, this will be Luka Doncic's team, but it's going to be interesting to just see what they can do at this point. A lot of big names have already been taken off the board in free agency, but um, we never know with the Lakers, right? Obviously, no one knew about that Luka Doncic trade, so who knows what they could be working on behind the scenes. Um, some of the underrated moves that I want to talk about in free agency is Ty Jerome to the Grizzlies. He's a guy that I think the Grizzlies now are going to have John Morant, Scottie Pippen Jr., and Ty Jerome. So they're going to be able to. They're a team that last year we saw them running a lot of 2 point guard kind of rotation. So I think Ty Jerome can be that guy who comes off the bench and can run with Scottie Pippen Jr. He can run with Ja, or he can be that guard who comes off the bench and kind of gives them a punch. Again, I talked about Bruce Brown to the Nuggets. I think he's a guy that he was a fan favorite, but he is returning to Denver, where he made an impact for them during their championship run, and he is, when he was with that Denver team, he was able to go out and get a bag that offseason after his play. But it's going to be interesting to see how he is used, because remember, when he was with Denver, they had Mike Malone as their head coach. Now they don't anymore. So we'll see how he fits into this new form of the Denver Nuggets. Some other teams that made some good signings: D'Angelo Russell to the Mavericks, a 2-year, $13 million deal, but it's more of a stopgap until Kyrie Irving returns. But with D'Angelo Russell, Cooper Flagg, Klay Thompson, Anthony Davis, Derek Lively, PJ Washington, Daniel Gafford, I think that is a team that when Kyrie Irving comes back, they are going to be a force to be reckoned with. I'm really excited to see this Dallas Mavericks team going forward. Now, the Atlanta Hawks did lose Karis LeVert. He's going over to the Detroit Pistons. Now, the Detroit Pistons were able to add Duncan Robinson in a sign-in trade as well after losing Tim Hardaway. And they were in contract discussions with Malik Beasley. But if you guys haven't heard, Malik Beasley is currently under investigation for gambling, potential involvement in gambling during the previous season, during his time with the Milwaukee Bucks. So all of that has now been on pause. I think losing Malik Beasley would be really, really, detrimental to that Detroit Pistons team. But again, they went out and got a shooter in Duncan Robinson. They added Karis LeVert, so I think they're trying to kind of replenish some of the things that they've lost. And if Malik Beasley is cleared of the accusations in that investigation, and he can return to Detroit, I think that would be great for them, and they would continue to build on that success that they had last year. Now, Jordan Clarkson, I mentioned earlier with when I brought up Ace Bailey, Jordan Clarkson got bought out due to a lack of progress on trade talks from the Utah Jazz, but he's rumored to sign with the New York Knicks, and I think he is going to be a guard that is going to be great for them as long as their coach trusts the bench unit. He's a guy that can come in, score, and do some things offensively that the Knicks seem to lack last year. So I think he could have got a bigger deal elsewhere, but I think he just really wanted to go to New York and be with that organization. He took I believe it was a vet minimum deal. Again, I think he could have got a bigger contract with another team, but I think he just really wanted to go to New York. Um, you know, Another big signing that broke today was the Bucks trading or waiving Damian Lillard to sign Miles Turner to a 4-year, $107 million deal. So the Pacers lose their big man, and the Bucks went out and since they lost Brook Lopez, they needed to bring in another center. And they went out and got one of the best ones available on the market in Miles Turner. Now, when I saw this, I was initially shocked that Miles Turner left Indiana, but then minutes later, when you see that the Bucks waived Damian Lillard and stretched out his contract to spread it out over the next couple of seasons, so that they didn't have to take up all of their cap space, you know, I I, I just didn't expect that whatsoever, And I think Dame, obviously, he's going to be recovering from the Achilles injury he suffered in the playoffs, and he's not going to play next year. But now seeing that he is going to be owed over $100 million, the Bucks are still going to pay him that contract. But it's just, I was just so shocked to see that. That was not on my bingo card this year in free agency, that a team would waive Damian Lillard. And it's, I hope that Lillard can recover and get back to his old self. Have a speedy recovery, and it's going to be interesting to see if he signs with the team this offseason, or if he is going to wait it out, recover, and then teams are going to try to sign him next offseason. Yeah, I just, when I saw that this morning, I had to double check that I was not getting sent-held. Yeah, it was a shocker to me. It was, I just didn't expect that. Again, like, it's Damian Lillard, and I think that the Bucks just had their run and knew they had to do something different. But again, I just don't think that they have enough to compete in the East anymore. Obviously, it's a wide open Eastern Conference. With the Pacers injured, losing Tyrese Halliburton, now Miles Turner. The Celtics are injured without Jason Tatum. But I just don't think even adding Miles Turner in, to replace Damian Lillard is enough for the Bucks to compete. So who knows? Is Giannis going to be a Milwaukee lifer, or is he out the door pretty soon? Because I don't think he was happy with those moves. I think he posted on Twitter or X, whatever you want to call it, that he didn't know what was going on. So keep your eyes out on that. Giannis he could be unhappy. That could lead to some potential dysfunction in that locker room, in that organization. So, but I want to move on, and I want to talk about something that I was I had a great time watching. If you guys don't watch UFC 317 happened this past weekend, with the main event being Ilia Topuria versus Charles Oliveira. I really am just going to talk about the main card fights, but I really enjoyed this card. Peyton Talbot versus Felipe Lima. Talbot won via unanimous decision. Dariush versus Renato Moicano. Dariush wins in a unanimous decision. Dariush is actually Assyrian. I'm Assyrian, and it was cool to see that your fellow countryman was able to pull it off. Shout out to Dariush for pulling that out. A guy who I was really excited to watch was Joshua Van versus Brandon Royval. Van won via unanimous decision. I think, at the end of that fight, he was able to secure the win, and it was a great fight, and it's going to be interesting to see who he goes up and fights next. I think Alexandre Pantoja and Kai Kara France, they fought as the co-main event, and Pantoja won it via submission, but I believe he called out Joshua Van and even told him, he's like, hey, you've never fought me before. So really excited to see the next main UFC event. We're going to be covering UFC a little bit more. Probably not all of the fight nights and other events, but definitely we want to talk about those main events. So UFC 318 we'll talk about, 319, all those bigger ones. We will definitely talk about at least the main cards, or some of the most exciting fights. But yeah, I mean, this was a great card. And then obviously Ilia Topuria versus Charles Oliveira was the headlining event for UFC 317. And man, I mean, what a knockout. Ilia Topuria knocked Charles Oliveira out in the first round. And I mean, he moved up from featherweight and claimed the vacant lightweight title in dominant fashion. I mean, he cut Oliveira early, but, he reversed the takedown and then landed that nasty right hook that really just ended the fight instantly. And man, I mean, I was sitting there watching that fight, and I can't tell you how high I jumped up when I saw that. It was an incredible fight. Topuria wins. He's now a 2-division UFC champion. He's undefeated at 17-0. After the fight, they brought in Paddy Pimblett. They got into a little tussle in the ring. Dana White afterwards was talking about how he wouldn't have let that happen if he was there. He already went to the back. But is that going to be a fight that we're going to see? Do you guys want to see that fight, Topuria versus Paddy? I think Sugar Sean O'Malley was glad that Topuria did not accept his call out a couple fights ago, because that was a brutal knockout. But again, that was a hell of a card, hell of fights, great fights that we were able to see on UFC 317's card, and I'm excited for the next one. But yeah, guys, I mean, I think that is all that I've got for you today on this week's episode of the Figures of Sport podcast. Next week, we are going to talk about any other trades that are happening, or free agency signings across the NBA. NFL is coming up really, really soon, so we're going to be talking about that soon. Next week, we're going to talk a little bit more about baseball as well. The All-Star game is coming up. We're going to talk about the All-Star rosters, some of the players who got snubbed, who got lucky and got voted in. But make sure you guys stay tuned. Check out the link in our description for our Instagram, our TikTok. And if you don't watch the YouTube videos, we're going to have the podcast on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify. And we are going to make sure that you guys are enjoying the content. That is the number one priority for me here at Figures of Sport. And I'm excited for you guys. I'm excited to do this for you guys. So again, make sure, if you haven't already, you subscribe, you turn the notification bell on so you know when we're posting. We're starting to post more like YouTube shorts, Instagram reels, TikTok videos, all of those things, because we want you guys to get as much Figures of Sport content as you can have. That's my goal here. So we'll catch you guys on the next one. Like I said, if you haven't already, make sure you subscribe, click that notification bell, check us out on other social channels, and we will see you guys on the next episode. Thanks for listening.